out and out. "Oh, how must I manage?" she asked, helplessly. "If Deborah had been alive, she would have known what to do with the gentleman visitor. Must I put razors in his dressing-room? Dear, dear! And I've got none. Deborah would have had them. And slippers and coat-brushes?" I suggested that probably he would bring all these things with him. "And after dinner? How am I to know when to get up and leave him to his wine? Deborah would have done it so well; she would have been quite in her element. Will he want coffee, do you think?" I undertook the management of the coffee, and told her I would instruct Martha in the act of waiting, in which it must be owned she was terribly deficient, and that I had no doubt Major and Mrs Jenkyns would understand the quiet mode in which a lady lived by herself in a country town. But she was sadly fluttered. I made her empty her decanters and bring up 2 fresh bottles of wine. I wished I could have prevented her from being present at my instructions to Martha, for she frequently cut in with some fresh direction, muddling the poor girl's mind as she stood open-mouthed, listening to us both. "Hand the vegetables round," said I, foolishly I see now, for it was aiming at more than we could accomplish with quietness and simplicity; and then, seeing her look bewildered, I added, "Take the vegetables round to people, and let them help themselves." "And mind you go first to the ladies," put in Miss Matilda. "Always go to the ladies before gentlemen when you are waiting." "I'll do it as you tell me, ma'am," said Martha, "but I like lads best." We felt very uncomfortable and shocked at this speech of Martha's, yet I don't think she meant any harm; and on the whole she attended very well to our directions, except that she nudged the Major when he did not help himself as soon as she expected to the potatoes, while she was handing them round. The Major and his wife were quiet, unpretending people enough when they did come; languid, as all East Indians are, I suppose. We were rather dismayed at their bringing 2 servants with them, a Hindoo body servant for the Major, and a steady, elderly maid for his wife; but they slept at the inn, and took off a good deal of the responsibility by attending carefully to their master's and mistress's comfort. Martha, to be sure, had never ended her staring at the East Indian's white turban and brown complexion, and I saw that Miss Matilda shrunk away from him a little as he waited at dinner. Indeed, she asked me, when they were gone, if he did not remind me of Bluebeard. On the whole, the visit was most satisfactory, and is a subject of conversation even now with Miss Matilda. At the time it greatly excited Cranford, and even stirred up the apathetic and honourable Mrs Jamieson to some expression of interest, when I went to call and thank her for the kind answers she had vouchsafed to Miss Matilda's inquiries as to the arrangement of a gentleman's dressing-room; answers which I must confess she had given in the wearied manner of the Scandinavian prophetess. Leave me to repose. And now I come to the love affair. It seems that Miss Pole had a cousin, once or twice removed, who had offered to Miss Matty long ago. Now this cousin lived 4 or 5 miles from Cranford on his own estate, but his property was not large enough to entitle him to rank higher than a yeoman, or rather, with something of the pride which apes humility, he had refused to push himself on, as so many of his class had done, into the ranks of the squires. He would not allow himself to be called Thomas Holbrook, Esquire; he even sent back letters with this address, telling the postmistress at Cranford that his name was Mr Thomas Holbrook, yeoman. He rejected all domestic innovations; he would have the house door stand open in summer and shut in winter, without knocker or bell to summon a servant. The closed fist or the knob of a stick did this office for him if he found the door locked. He despised every refinement which had not its root deep down in humanity. If people were not ill, he saw no necessity for moderating his voice. He spoke the dialect of the country in perfection, and constantly used it in conversation, although Miss Pole, who gave me these particulars, added, that he read aloud more beautifully and with more feeling than any one she had ever heard, except the late rector. "And how came Miss Matilda not to marry him?" I asked. "Oh, I don't know. She was willing enough, I think; but you know cousin Thomas would not have been enough of a gentleman for the rector and Miss Jenkyns." "Well, but they were not to marry him," said I, impatiently. "No, but they did not like Miss Matty to marry below her rank. You know she was the rector's daughter, and somehow they are related to Sir Peter Arley. Miss Jenkyns thought a lot of that." "Poor Miss Matty!" said I. "Nay, now, I don't know anything more than that he offered and was refused. Miss Matty might not like him, and Miss Jenkyns might never have said a word; it is only a guess of mine." "Has she never seen him since?" I inquired. "No, I think not. You see, Woodley, cousin Thomas's house, lies half-way between Cranford and Misselton, and I know he made Misselton his market town very soon after he had offered to Miss Matty, and I don't think he has been into Cranford above once or twice since. Once, when I was walking with Miss Matty in High Street, and suddenly she darted from me, and went up Shire Lane. A few minutes after, I was startled by meeting cousin Thomas." "How old is he?" I asked, after a pause of castle building. "He must be about 70, I think, my dear," said Miss Pole, blowing up my castle as if by gunpowder into small fragments. Very soon after, at least during my visit to Miss Matilda, I had the opportunity of seeing Mr Holbrook, seeing, too, his first encounter with his former love, after 30 or 40 years' separation. I was helping to decide whether any of the new assortment of coloured silks which they had just received at the shop would do to match a grey and black mousseline delaine that wanted a new breadth, when a tall, thin, Don Quixote-looking old man came into the shop for some woollen gloves. I had never seen the person, who was rather striking, before, and I watched him rather attentively while Miss Matty listened to the shopman. The stranger wore a blue coat with brass buttons, drab breeches, and gaiters, and drummed with his fingers on the counter until he was attended to. When he answered the shop-boy's question, "What can I have the pleasure of showing you to-day, sir?" I saw Miss Matilda start, and then suddenly sit down, and instantly I guessed who it was. She had made some inquiry which had to be carried round to the other shopman. "Miss Jenkyns wants the black sarcenet 2 and 2d. the yard," and Mr Holbrook caught the name, and was across the shop in 2 strides. "Matty! Miss Matilda! Miss Jenkyns! God bless my soul, I should not have known you! How are you? How are you?" He kept shaking her hand in a way which proved the warmth of his friendship, but he repeated so often, as to himself, "I should not have known you," that any sentimental romance which I might be inclined to build was quite done away with by his manner. However, he kept talking to us all the time we were in the shop, and then waving the shopman with the unpurchased gloves on one side, with "Another time, sir, another time," he walked home with us. I am happy to say my client, Miss Matilda, also left the shop in an equally bewildered state, not having purchased either green or red silk. Mr Holbrook was evidently full with the honest, loud-spoken joy at meeting his old love again. He touched on the changes that had taken place; he even spoke of Miss Jenkyns as "your poor sister." Well, well, we all have our faults; and bade us good-bye with many a hope that he should soon see Miss Matty again. She went straight to her room, and never came back till our early tea-time, when I thought she looked as if she had been crying. Chapter 3. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org.